turn during a cross-country road trip led Sarah and her friends, Jack and Lily, to the town of Eldridge. A quaint place that neither their GPS nor their paper map recognized. Its serenity was captivating. Rustic houses, cobblestone streets, and an air of old-world charm. The town seemed oddly out of time. There were no cell towers, the streets were lit by gas lamps, and the people, though dressed in modern clothes, had an old-world demeanor. Upon entering, they were greeted by a friendly old man named Mr. Hawthorne, the town's historian. "It's not often we get visitors in Eldridge," he said with a wide smile, "but we're happy to have you." The townsfolk, though reserved, were courteous. The trio found lodging at a local inn and spent the day exploring. Eldridge had no modern amenities, but it offered warm pies from bakeries, fresh produce from the market, and tales from elders that made time fly. As evening approached, Sarah noticed something peculiar. The townspeople seemed anxious. Doors and windows were shut and bolted, children were hurriedly brought inside, and a heavy silence settled. Curiosity piqued, Sarah and her friends decided to explore the town after sunset. The streets, though eerily quiet, felt alive. The soft glow of the gas lamps revealed fleeting shadows and whispered conversations. Suddenly, a woman's scream pierced the night. Sarah and her friends rushed to its source and found themselves at the town square. A scene of chaos unfolded before them. People were running helter-skelter, flames engulfed a large section of the town, and the church bell tolled continuously. Horrified, they saw a young woman, identical to Lily, being dragged away by two men towards the burning pyre. Lily, panic-stricken, cried out, but her doppelganger didn't respond. Mr. Hawthorne appeared, pulling the trio into the shadows. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. This is Eldridge's eternal curse. Every night, we relive the tragic events of the fire that consumed our town a century ago. The town you see is just a shadow of its past." Jack stammered, "But why do we see her?" pointing at the doppelganger Lily. Mr. Hawthorne's gaze lowered. "Every cycle, the town claims a visitor as its own, making them a part of this never-ending loop. She's the chosen one this time." The horrifying realization dawned upon them. The stories, the hospitality, the entire day had been a ruse, drawing them into Eldridge's malevolent snare. Lily, paralyzed with fear, was approached by the town's priest, a sinister figure with hollow eyes. "You are the offering," he intoned. "Through you, Eldridge hopes to break free from this cycle." The town's inhabitants circled the trio, chanting an ancient hymn. The world spun as Sarah and Jack tried to resist, but an overpowering force drew them into the reenactment. Hours, or perhaps minutes later, the fire subsided and dawn broke. The town of Eldridge was serene again, showing no signs of the night's horrors. The next morning, as a new set of travelers entered the town, they were greeted by a familiar face. "It's not often we get visitors in Eldridge," Lily said with a wide smile. Her memories of Sarah and Jack faded like wisps of a forgotten dream, "but we're happy to have you." And so, the town of Eldridge, lost in time and cursed by its own deeds, waited for sundown to relive its tragedy, ensnaring unsuspecting souls in its eternal loop of horror. As the sun set on an isolated desert highway, Miles' vintage sedan stuttered to a reluctant stop. He cursed under his breath. They were miles from the nearest town, with no cell signal. He was accompanied by his girlfriend Eliza and his college buddy, Joel. "Great. Just great," Eliza murmured, looking around the seemingly endless stretch of barren land. Joel tried to lighten the mood. "At least we've got each other's company. It's better than being stuck here alone." As darkness enveloped them, the temperature dropped rapidly. Inside the car, Miles scrambled for the old radio, hoping to pick up a signal and perhaps some soothing music. Instead, what they heard made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. A shaky voice spoke, clearly in distress. "Is anyone out there? We're stranded. There's something outside the car." Please coordinates 34.4501 degrees N, 114.2718 degrees W. Please help. The voice was filled with a chilling desperation. Miles looked at the car's GPS. Their coordinates matched the ones from the plea. But what shook them even more was the date accompanying the distress call. August the 13th, 2008. 15 years ago to the day. This has to be a prank, Joel whispered, his eyes darting outside. Eliza clutched Miles' arm. Did you hear that? The part about something outside the car. What was that about? Miles swallowed, turning off the radio. Let's not jump to conclusions. The transmission might be bouncing around due to atmospheric conditions. It's old, but it's getting picked up now. But they all knew the coordinates were no coincidence. After a while, Joel suggested they take turns resting while one of them kept watch. Miles took the first watch. Hours seemed to stretch endlessly. The desert was eerily quiet, save for the occasional gust of wind. Then, in the distance, a soft hum began. It was faint but grew steadily louder. It sounded like whispering voices. The radio suddenly crackled to life on its own, and the same desperate voice bled out, even more panicked than before. They're all around. Don't get out of the car. No matter what you hear, or what you think you see. Don't get out. Miles' heart raced. The whispering grew louder, surrounding the car, a cacophony of voices from all directions. Then, as suddenly as they started, they stopped. Eliza, now awake, whispered, "Did you see that?" She pointed to a faint light dancing in the distance, which looked like torches carried by shadowy figures. The group watched, frozen in horror, as the figures seemed to circle them from a distance, the lights bobbing rhythmically, echoing the cadence of a ritualistic chant. Time lost meaning. The chants, the circling lights, the chilling radio plea, they merged into one relentless horror. And then, a knock on the car window. Outside stood a man, disheveled, his clothes ragged and face scarred by time and the elements. His eyes, however, burned with clarity and urgency. "You need to leave. Now. Before they come closer." Joel, despite his fear, shouted, "Who are you?" "I sent that message 15 years ago," the man replied, his voice raspy but recognizable from the radio plea. "But how are you here? How are you alive?" Eliza asked, tears streaming down her face. He looked away, voice quivering. "I never left. Every time someone comes here, they come for them. They took my family. They'll come for you too." "But the car won't start," Miles exclaimed. The stranger approached the front of the car, tinkering for a moment. The engine roared to life. "Go. Don't stop until you reach the next town. And never come back." Without waiting for a reply, the man disappeared into the darkness. Miles floored the accelerator, the car speeding away, leaving the haunting desert behind. When they finally reached the nearest town, they shared their ordeal with the locals. One elderly woman nodded solemnly. "That stretch is cursed. Many have disappeared over the years. That man you met, he's been missing for over a decade. Some say he roams the desert, trying to save others from the fate he couldn't save his family from." The trio left, haunted by the experience. The desert highway and its ghostly guardian remained, an eternal echo of a tragedy that refused to fade. It had been days since Sarah, Marco, and Jai started their journey through the Mesquite Desert. Armed with a rudimentary map, their goal was a temple hidden deep within its treacherous terrains, rumored to hold ancient treasures. But as each day passed, the sun grew harsher, water became scarce, and despair crept in. On the fourth morning, just as hope seemed to evaporate with the early mist, they spotted it. A lush green patch amidst the golden sands, with turrets and spires glistening under the sun. The sound of laughter and distant chimes reached their ears. An oasis town. "We're saved," Jai exclaimed, the exhaustion evident in his voice. They hastened their steps, drawn to the beckoning mirage. Upon entering the town, they were met with jubilant faces, welcoming them with open arms. People danced in the streets, stalls were laden with fruits they had never seen before, and the air was filled with the melody of unknown tunes. The travelers were led to a grand palace at the center. A regal woman, draped in shimmering silks, introduced herself as Queen Nyla. "It's not often we have visitors. Stay, enjoy our hospitality," she said, her voice melodious yet oddly distant. Days turned into nights, and the trio indulged in the luxuries of the oasis. However, they started noticing oddities. The same faces danced in the streets every day, the same songs played endlessly, and no one ever spoke of the world beyond the oasis. One evening, Sarah came across an old man, different from the rest, with eyes clouded by age and grief. In hushed tones, he whispered, "This is not a real place, child. It's a prison for souls. You must leave before the next full moon, or be trapped like us." Sarah, taken aback, asked, "Why are you telling me this?" The old man looked around cautiously. "I was a wanderer like you, entrapped by the allure of Siren, the name of this cursed oasis. On the night of the full moon, Queen Nyla conducts a ceremony that binds the living to this realm. I'm bound forever, but you still have a chance." Disturbed by this revelation, Sarah sought Marco and Jai. When she shared the old man's warning, Jai was skeptical. "It's just tales by an old man, don't let it bother you." But Marco had observed the repetitions too. "We need to be careful. We came here for the temple, not to be trapped in endless festivities." They decided to confront Queen Nyla. That night, as the moon cast its silvery glow, they entered the palace, only to stumble upon a grand chamber filled with hundreds of mirrors. In each mirror, they saw reflections of different realms, different times, and the trapped souls within. Nyla appeared behind them, her demeanor no longer welcoming. "Trying to leave so soon? You'll find that quite challenging." "Why are you doing this?" Sarah demanded. Nyla's eyes glinted with ancient sadness. "Centuries ago, I sought to protect my people from an impending disaster. In my desperation, I turned to dark magics, creating this mirage to trap the catastrophe within. But the spell went wrong, binding us all to this realm, forever replaying our last days. With each new soul, I hope to break the curse, but it only grows stronger." Marco, ever the strategist, posed a deal. "What if we help you? We came searching for the temple, perhaps it holds the key to your release." A flicker of hope passed Nyla's face. "Very well. But if we fail, you'll join the dance of the trapped." Following the old map and with Nyla's guidance, they uncovered the temple. Inside, amidst webs and decay, stood a magnificent altar holding a radiant gem, the heart of Mesqua. Sarah, connecting the dots, realized this gem might be the source of the oasis's power. "If we release its energy, we might break the curse," Nyla finished. With the combined efforts of the trio and Nyla, they began a counter-ritual. The gem pulsed, releasing waves of energy. The mirage wavered, flickering between the bustling town and an empty desert. As dawn approached, the oasis town of Siren began to fade, releasing the souls trapped for centuries. The desert reclaimed its space, leaving no trace of the once vibrant town. The trio, now back in the vastness of Mesqua, found the temple's treasures but left them untouched, a tribute to the lost town of Siren. Returning to civilization, they often recounted their desert adventure, speaking of a mirage that held an eternal town, and a queen who sacrificed herself to save her people. The tale of Siren became legend, a ghostly whisper amidst the shifting sands. As the clock ticks towards dawn, this is Midnight Callers signing off, reminding you, when darkness falls, the stories rise. Sleep tight, if you dare.